let me get that. I'm gonna get us up on Zoom. Hold on 1 second, guys, while I get us Facebooked. Okay, so welcome everyone to the weekly community briefing. Today we have a great guest that's going to talk about JP Morgan's strategies for interacting and creating banking relationships in the Black community. One of the things that we found was during the COVID and then the PPP applications was that a lot of our businesses do not have relationships with their bank. So it became difficult for them to be able to find assistance and help for their businesses. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And if you guys have any questions, please put it in the chat room. We're going to make sure everyone other than the speakers are muted so that we can make sure we're all getting, let me make sure I can go live here. Give me 1 second and go live. Oh, yeah. So anyway, so that's that. But before we get started and before we bring on our wonderful, wonderful speaker who has agreed to participate with us, there is, right now, we're in an amazing climate because we're the flavor of the month, guys. So I'm just going to be blatant about it. It is what it is. And so there are a number of individuals that are finally hearing our voices and hearing the issues that we have had in our communities for finding funding and capital and just being able to run and have the resources we need in order to run our businesses. So that's a fantastic thing. I just did a little brief research today. Co-America is partnering up with the National Business League, and they're going to pledge $1 million over the next 4 years in order to help small businesses. They're going to provide training, tech training, TA, and other resources and capital. And as well as, so that kind of got me to looking for some other things, some other corporations that are jumping on board. And Facebook has, they're coming up with $200 million that they're pledging. Google is $175 million that they're pledging to help small businesses. There's a group called the 15% Pledge, and this is coming from the major retailers out there. So they're going to pledge 15% of their profits. And PayPal is creating a fund for $530 million, and they're going to start talking about the ways to support Black-owned businesses. So here's what tomorrow on the BusinessZone, which is my other show, and let me back up a little bit. I'm Crystal Mitchell, the co-director of Recycling Black Dollars, and I'm also a business coach, and I host a show called the BusinessZone with Crystal and Gilbert every Friday afternoon at 3 o'clock. So I'm going to talk about these in detail on who's giving money and how they're giving money and how it can help you and what you need to do, because we got to have parts and we got to take part in this as well, right? So that's kind of what we're going to talk about today is what do we need to do to take part to make sure our businesses are business ready, bank loan ready, and contract ready, right? Because we got to be in place as well. We got to do our part. So those are the things that we're going to be talking about. So tune in tomorrow at 3 o'clock and get some details on how we can position and how we can get money. This is also for nonprofits. So my other Recycling Black Dollars, we're going to be going out there writing proposals. So get your proposal writing on. Lula, get your proposal writing on and find yourself if you're a nonprofit, find yourself a good grant writer. Or there's another opportunity called the Grantsmanship Center. They have a phenomenal class if you don't know how to write grants. But I say right now, everybody needs to get in position in order to take advantage of, because this is Never gonna come around again. I can guarantee you that. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity, and we need to do what we need to do. Okay. So, all right, Stephen. So, so with that, do we want to go on with Punita? Okay. So we are pretty privileged here, guys. We have, oh, here's Karen. Awesome. So if anybody has any questions, you can put them down in the chat room. And so it's Miss Karen, and I'm going to introduce her. So does everyone have a business that's on for-profit or nonprofit? You can just speak up right now.
I have both.
Okay, what is the both?
I have a sole proprietorship, which is my wellness business, and I have a nonprofit that helps the community get balanced and in alignment. And also, I want to expand to for housing, transitional housing.
Okay. All right, sounds fantastic. Anybody else want to chime in? Karen, are you ready?
Of course I am. I'm trying to get onto a bigger screen, but I'm always ready.
All right. Good morning, Karen. How are you? I am so honored to have you as my co-host today. You guys.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
You're
Hi.
Hi.
This computer is a little hinky. I was trying to log in with a new one. You should never wait, but I'm here.
Okay. Well, I think you can work it without that. Miss Karen Blackwell is a colleague, and I tell you, in the space of supplier diversity, she is the woman. She was before she retired. Before she retired, she was with Nestle International.
Nestle is an international. I managed supplier diversity for Nestle in the United States, which was the 8 operating companies.
Right. So
Yeah.
I am honored to have her here. I'm going to kind of let her introduce herself because she knows her credentials better than I can read them to you. And so welcome, Karen. We are so happy to have you. And then our guest today is Punita Patel from JP Morgan Chase. So we're going to kind of dwell into talking about the best practices of building a relationship with JP Morgan. So Ms. Karen, I'm going to turn it over to you so you can introduce yourself to everyone.
Well, it's really very good to be speaking with so many of you and seeing your faces using Zoom. I think that my experience in Los Angeles is pretty extensive. I'd like you to know that I started out with Watts Labor Community Action Committee, WLCAC, and that was a long time ago. And I was in their technical services group, which was the group that wrote proposals. So it really helped me understand the politics of how money gets distributed. And from there, I went into the city of Los Angeles, where I was a city planner. After that, I went to a private company where I was a lobbyist. I had my own lobbyist company, and that was great. And then I went back into government, working with first Mayor Reardon and then Mayor Hahn, managing the supplier diversity program. I worked on the Alameda Corridor project, and many of you might have known my name from there. And then after that successful run, and it was successful, I moved on to Nestle, and I was there for about 15 years and managed supplier diversity from a national perspective. So those 8 operating companies had a combined spend of about $9 billion annually. It's really the job, I believe, of a supplier diversity professional is, you would think it's working with minority businesses. It's not. Really, it is working with the internal stakeholders, because I used to tell them that I could have minority businesses lined like our office in Glendale all the way to the airport. They weren't going to be willing to talk to them and really explain how to do business, and then really procurement opportunities that would make sense for bid on and compete for. It really does make a difference. So it's really being that, I found that being that internal voice, constantly asking the question, What are we doing? How are we doing this? What table? What can be on the table? How do we see Lulu's hand? But is that a question? No? Okay. Anyway, it's like, how do we stay engaged around this? But more importantly, how do we make it real, right? It's one thing to talk about it. It's another thing to really get minority businesses into the supply chain. And just as important, if not more important, is to keep them in the supply chain. How do we do that? So that was what I did. I had a lot of different opportunities while with Nestle, with the National Minority Supplier Development Council, being part of the food and beverage industry, speaking. But more importantly, I think it was, as I said, talking to the internal stakeholders and then also meeting some fantastic business owners, so that I never, ever thought that there wasn't a company that could get the job done. It was just, how do we find them? Do we do them in a timely manner? And do they have the band? That's me.
Okay, well, thank you for that. I didn't know you were so connected and so involved. I just knew you from our Recycling Black Dollars and us submitting application proposals to Nestle, but you are very connected to what's going on in our city. So,
well, I just have to say that working with Mohammed Nasruddin in the early days was truly an honor. And, you know, there were so many really gifted people who have been part of this community that it's really important to remember the bridges that brought us across.
I would completely agree. And I think we are set up today for a new look that if we can become as a community a voice that we can help all of our businesses and we can really raise our place of excellence by the interaction and the collaboration of all of us. I think that would be a very lofty goal, but a goal nevertheless. So that's my utopia. That's my utopia. So we want to,
yes.
Let me see. I want to introduce, or do you want to introduce her?
Well, I think you should, because you have all the information there. I can just say that I found Punita to be really engaged and open to not conversation, but also really talking things through. And I think that that really is the heart of somebody who's excellent in their role. It was a Punita yesterday on the phone, and I know Crystal will now do a great introduction.
Okay, so we want to welcome our guests. As our flyer indicated, we're going to talk about which I found from the last 9 weeks, and also from really working with businesses in our community, that the one area when it comes to financing, besides the lack of accounting systems in place and no financials, but the biggest issue I find is that some of us didn't even know that we could build relationships with our bank and be on our team to help us find and be ready for capital. So I want to introduce Ms. Punita Patel. She's a global supplier and VP of JP Morgan Chase. For the Asian American Employment Resource Group. She directs the development and implementation of best practices and strategy for diversity supply in an international inclusive supply chain. And so we want to welcome Punita, and we're honored to have you. Thank you so much for coming out to speak or tapping in to speak to our group here. Appreciate it. So welcome.
Well, thank you. First and foremost, let me say that I too was really you guys are wonderful to connect with yesterday when we had our conversation, but really, really honored to have you guys ask me to, one, be a part of this group, and having, I feel really welcomed, right? Especially sometimes Zoom kind of creates that kind of opportunity too, but just the way this group is engaged, it's just wonderful to have. So one, it's an honor for me to have the opportunity to really share a little bit about what we do. I think that sometimes there's just so much going around around us, and there's so many messages that it's hard to even know which messages make sense or what that information is. Like I find myself when there's a lot of information, I don't know which piece of it I need to focus in on to get what I need. So sometimes we just need a little refresher for all of us to do that. So, and I'm learning a lot about the local community, and I love the way everyone's engaged in talking about kind of active things that they can do, or giving tips to each other on how to do active things. So that's just such a fabulous thing to see. So, you know, kudos to you, Crystal, for organizing that.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And Mr. Steven, he's back there. He's our producer. He's pretty awesome. He goes out and does his part, and I couldn't do it without him. So thank you. So you want to tell us a little bit, I know JP Morgan is one of the largest financial institutions in the world. So if you give us a little background on the organization itself, and then let's talk about maybe 5 areas that a small business owner should be engaged in order to create a relationship, and what are those opportunities at JP Morgan?
Sure. So let me start with, we are in terms of the financial size of the organization, we're the largest banking institution in the United States. It varies by, you know, the number of locations and all those things, right? Like we're in the top 4 organizations from the banking perspective in any variety of those little ranking situations, right? Whether you're talking about number of branches, locations, activations, but in terms of dollars, we're the largest organization in the United States. So my role is looking at supplier diversity, both in the United States as well as in internationally. And when we think about that, we try to be very intentional about focusing on the countries. And I want to keep our talk to the United States because that's where we are right now. I'm happy to share more information on other areas as we you know, find a need for them or there's an interest. Mm-hmm. So when I'm going to harken back to a little bit of what Karen had said. I think that the role of supplier diversity at JP Morgan Chase, you know, we want to create opportunities for the diverse business community to have as much representation in our supply chain as we can possibly include them at. And that includes getting to know the diverse business community, as well as the other part of that job, which people don't know, is really creating the relationship and trust internal to our organization too, so that we can bring our diverse business partners in and know that when we're bringing in those diverse partners, that our word that these companies are ready to work with them is valued and that pathway, right? So we really become an advocate for the diverse business communities in our corporations. And so I think that was really, you know, well shared and stated, and it is something that most people are not familiar with the other, you know, I don't know, 5 or 10 hours or 20 hours of our day that goes into those activities. So, you know, I'll start with a big picture of what we do, where we have. So last year, JP Morgan Chase spent $2.5 billion with diverse businesses. And, you know, we're really happy. We got, in 2019, we also were inducted into the $1 Billion Roundtable, which when you think about supplier diversity world, that's the standard of excellence for best-in-class supplier diversity programming and activations when you're able to get recognized by the BDR and become a member of it. It's a 20-year organization that stemmed from some of the learnings from the NMSCC, which is one of the organizations that was mentioned recently. And it started off as an organization that really focused on recognizing and creating excellence and standards of excellence that can be shared across corporate organizations on the private side, for focused on minority and women-owned spend, and it's expanded over the years on what that takes, and now it looks at LGBT, disability, and veteran-owned spend also. That organization is about 21 years old this year, and in that 21 years, out of all the Fortune 1000 organizations in the United States, there's only 28 members that are able to make that that organization and be able to achieve that level of attainment. And what it starts with is at least $1 billion or more in direct spend with diverse businesses. And then it expands on that, right? Like, how do you grow other opportunities? How do you develop suppliers? How do you create tier 2 opportunities and so forth? So we're really happy and proud to have achieved that. But that's great for all the things that we're trying to do with the programming. I think when it comes down to it, the way we approach supplier diversity at JPMorgan Chase is kind of twofold. What can we do to increase diversity in our own supply chain? And when we know that we can't have everyone that's out there that's a diverse supplier in our supply chain. That's not feasible for us or any other corporations. But we want to take a look at it and say, then what can we do to create opportunities for diverse suppliers in addition to what we're doing? And that's where supporting the advocacy organizations and supporting technical skills assistance organizations come into play. So we also kind of extend out and we support that through our philanthropy side of the house, so that then we can create those types of opportunities. In the Los Angeles area, we funded about $1 million between an organization called PACE and an organization called Opportunity Fund. There's other partnerships that we've had, but those partnerships create a combination of funding. They provide CDFI type of loan funding as well as some technical assistance. And then we have other organizations, right? And of course we support all the national organizations. And through those national organizations, the dollars that flow through to the sub-chapters of those organizations, including the National Urban League, including NMSDC, the Women's Business Economic Council, and others, right? Where we try to create pathways for the funds and education to go through. That said, I think that one of the things you opened up with was a question on what can we do to create relationships for banking and cash flow, right? What does that mean to us as a business? I think that a lot of small businesses also may not know that they can actually reach out to their banks. At least at JPMorgan Chase, we know that if a business or a person is interested in understanding a product or services, they have the opportunity to reach a person in two ways. They have an opportunity to go to the bank and ask to set up an appointment or to meet with a representative, whether it's for personal or for banking information. And then if you're not able to go in to a branch or you don't, or the other opportunity to connect with someone is through making an appointment with them, right? So you can go online. You don't have to go in personally to the branch. You can go online to chase.com and look through the tabs, and you'll be able to select an option to meet with a banker. And there's, as you trickle through the options on the left-hand side. And if not, you can do a search. There's a little search question that comes up and go, how do I set up an appointment? And then you can find your local banking organization and then set up an appointment to either speak with someone. And once you're kind of going down that track, that you're able to connect with them. So I think that one shouldn't be afraid to reach out to them. Don't think you have to know all the answers, because part of creating that relationship is that I don't know everything. If I had to go in and open a business account tomorrow, I don't know every single component. I know a few things. I know that I would certainly reach out to them and say, I need some time with a specialist to understand what it is that I need to do. What are the documents that I need? How does my business need to prepare? My goals are X. I don't need maybe a line of credit now. I may need it tomorrow. But having those conversations starts the beginning of that relationship, right? In terms of the banking access points. I don't hear you, but I see your finger, Karen.
Karen, did you have any questions for her?
Karen, I couldn't hear that.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So in a supplier diversity role, in a public facing role, I think we need to give people a little bit of direction as to how often they should follow up, how they should follow up. I know that in my role, I would constantly get emails and information from businesses sometimes it was really helpful to know that they had won an award or that they were expanding. How would you suggest, because we and especially now when people are going to be working differently, the ability to go into an office and meet with a banker could be challenging between now and the end of the year. We don't know. But let's say that they do get to the point where they can get that business card and now they have an email address. How often would you suggest, and what do you think from a banking perspective, what is the kind of information a banker would want to see about the growth and progress of a business?
Sure. So I think I want to start that with just a little bit of additional, like one step beyond that, because I want to acknowledge that, because you started with like there's something that I think that people, and I know that we tell businesses to reach out, but I also want businesses to value their time.
Yes.
Because your time is so valuable to the health and success of your business, that not only is it like looking at it, how effective am I going to be in my outreaches, right? Saying, there's times when you say hello because you're just at that point in a relationship and you say hello and you're done. And there's times where you reach out because, hello, I need some help, X, Y, and Z. Or there's times where you say, hello, we talked about my going after this new line of business. I was thinking about expanding and I might need some credit card facilities, or I may need the ability to be able to take credit cards. I'm ready for that now. How do we engage, right? Or we talked about so there's the follow-up versions. And I think that I give credit to all of the folks that are trying to run businesses, because they're really smart about the work that they're doing, that I'm hoping that can be the cadence. In terms of like, if you haven't touched base with your banker in once every quarter, then I think you should, right? Even if it's just to say hello. But I don't think you need to, unless you think it's going to be valuable, because there's going to be times where if you're working on a product or a service, you're going to have that touch point continuously until you get going. You understand it. Maybe you need training. Maybe you have a question. Maybe you're recommending something to them. So you're going to have that interaction. But at the very least, once a quarter, you should say, my goals are X. Here's where I'm at. Let's just connect and see where we're going. Right? Yeah. And that's whoever you're working with.
I agree. But I also think that we kind of assume that bankers might know our business. And sometimes they don't.
No.
So I think there's an education that's required on both sides. And I think that, that education can't happen at the time of a want, at the time of an ask. We have to help businesses understand that what we need to do is to create that pipeline. That was one of the biggest things that happened recently with the COVID opportunities for funding. People hadn't established a relationship with their bank. So now is the time of the ask, and actually it was almost too late for many of them. They didn't know who to talk to. They didn't know what to ask. They didn't know what kind of paperwork was necessary. And also, the bank didn't know their business. How easy is it to fund Ruth's Chris? Everybody drives by that. You know what it is. It's a restaurant. This is what they do. This is the number of people they're going to be employing. For many of the people who are part of this call, a bank might not know what they do, their value to the community, the number of people they're going to be employing who need to be able to pay their bills. So in that kind of a forward-looking relationship, really creating a relationship and not an ask.
So I think,
could you
I think
talk
you're right.
about that?
So that introducing yourself to an organization, to a banker, right? When you're doing that, I think going in with an idea of where you're looking to see your business go, right? I think that one, where you're looking to see your business go, understanding where your gaps are. And if you don't have financials, right, we know that we need them. Or at least I hope we know we need them by now. If not, we should know what our financials are and kind of understand our cash flow. It may not be in a beautiful written format. It may not be in the perfect format, but if you start with, I know I have this, you can get guidance on what additional things you need to do if you need to
Right.
tap into an accountant, if you need to tap into something like an opportunity fund or an MSCC or another organization that may be able to help walk you through it. The SBA has amazing webinars on detailed teachings
Right.
on how to do your books, right? I think it's overwhelming to go through all of that, but they have those resources. And sometimes that gentle reminder as we talk to someone and say, what should my business plan be? Because it's really, you know, what you want to do, you want to turn the banker into your business consultant. That's literally what you're doing when you're going to a banker, because the
Yes.
banker is going to know what 5 other businesses in your community are doing. And he's going to have that relationship locally to be able to say, I can connect you. Like if Karen and Crystal were in the same community area and they were banking with the banker at our organization, we hope if they're together, if Karen comes in and says, hey, I'm expanding my business into these areas, what are some of the businesses that you see doing that? And Crystal's naturally promoting businesses. So that connection, that's another point of connection, right? We want it to be that community connection for you, but you do have to not be afraid to come in and have those conversations.
I agree. I also would just like to add that I think that in addition to being your consultant, you really want your banker to be your advocate. You want your banker to understand your growth, even if you're not there now. Sometimes you really want them to be proud of your journey, but that means you have to share it. And how do you share that journey? It's not calling them every day, but it is highlighted. Like if you are going to contact your banker on a quarterly basis, then you really want to show them your growth since the last time we spoke. The last time we spoke, this is what I was doing. This is how I'm growing my revenue. This is how I'm growing my customer base. This is how sometimes what you have to do is not just focus on the new business, especially now. The new business may be hard to come by, but what might be easier is to tell your banker, I did a process improvement. I found out that I was missing X, Y, and Z by not having a more aggressive collection system. And that's what I did. And now my revenue is more consistent. Or I found out that I needed to automate. And if I could just do this type of automation, this is the kind of return I think I could get on it. Then now you're talking about the way in which your capital and your capital need is going to grow your revenue. And when your banker sees that you have a point of view that's looking forward, then even if they can't fund you right then, they know where you want to go and they want to be your champion. It's much easier to have someone be a champion in this space.
Absolutely. And then they will also be able to say, oh, I think if you grow your credit in this area, or if you utilize these mechanisms for improving your cash flow, or if you utilize this, you may your process, like those tools will start naturally tying together. But it does take a little bit of, I think, trust or courage. I don't want to say courage to be open about that, right? Like open about saying, I'm going to trust you to help me, or I'm going to just open up with you and take a chance on you being able to tell me. And then you have to, not because, the other thing I will say is that just because a banker says something, you can't take it as the only word. You need to be able to say, is this correct for me? And then it's just as, if I was going to say, hey, Karen, I'm thinking of going into business tomorrow and I want to open up a candy shop. Karen might say, what do you know about candy shops, Punita? Like, what does that make sense? And Crystal says, Punita, that's great. That's awesome about candy shops. I would have been glad that I looked at 2 people, because what if I didn't know enough? Or I can say, I did know enough to say, I'm going to go into it and I can move forward. So not everyone is going to have 100% of the information that applies to you. You also have to feel comfortable saying, let me step back and say, I need to build my credit, but maybe I don't need to open up 2 credit cards to build my credit. Maybe 1 is enough. Or I'm going to open up 1 and then let's circle back if that's enough, right? Like that active engagement. So just because someone's saying this is the process, you also have to step back and see how well it applies to you. Like I think that's intuitive. And even if you're talking to a banker at JP Morgan, it's perfectly fine to go talk to 2 other bankers at other locations too, right? To give yourself that well-rounded piece of information.
Punita, let me ask this question. So, what are some of the steps? First of all, let me ask this question. Does JP Morgan, the local branches and national, and I know now we're virtual, do you guys have events where you're meeting your customers and outline what your new products are? Because I know new products are developed all the time, and it may affect you may be applicable for it, but you know, in a consumer world and in a small business world, they're not on top of all of that, right? They're working in their business. So how do you get that information out to potential customers and also to your existing customers?
I know, and so you know, you bring up a really great point. Yeah, we are like everyone else, you know, with COVID. We're in the middle of trying to think about like, what is it that we need to do and change, right, to make ourselves effective. I think, you know, we were in our banking world where we had physical branches. We were so used to being able to share posters and knowledge and have the bankers in house talk to people, and then, you know, maybe a flyer went out in their statements or with their online statements, or if they logged on, if they were using online systems, you know, there's some information that gets pushed to you. But I think, you know, a portion of that was very physical and very, you know, hands-on. Mm-hmm. And so we're evolving ourselves into thinking, how do we create that additional visibility, right? Because, you know, we have the traditional methods and we can ramp those up, of course. Mm-hmm. But and some of the ways we try to do that is on, you know, we had in-person chats, and we do have some virtual chats that happen nationally, as well as in some of the more in the national kind of I think programming. We'll have some of the business chats that start happening, and then locally it was more in person. I think that this brings up a really good question of like opportunities for the local branches to do more remote chats. That said, you know, I think we hear a lot about branches being closed. We only have about 20% of our branch locations that are closed. The 80% of our 5,000 branches are still open and operating. Mm-hmm. And then we just have reduced hours during the daytime. And then we have the weekend hours that we normally had. And so we're just trying to create the right way to create enough distance and safety for everybody. So the branches are generally still open. They're 20% are not yet, right? They're going to ramp back up now that depending on whatever state we're in, and depending on the local requirements, if and when we can ramp up further, we'll ramp up further slowly but surely till we get to 100% again.
How about the companies?
We have something called, so I just want to just share one more piece of information before I forget, and I'm so sorry to say that. So there's something called Chase chats that happen, and they happen for 2 things. They happen for businesses, and they happen for personal finances. So if you are trying to learn about how to manage your own personal finances, you can find a Chase chat about personal finances. And if you're wanting to do conversations about business, then we have something called Chase chats for business. And so as you're looking for them, you can, on chase.com, we can also look up opportunities for Chase chats if you're reaching out to a branch, you know, and you're making that relationship. And that's a great way, by the way, to extend relationships with your banker, right? To say, hey, I heard about Chase chats for banking or for personal things. When are you having those? I'm interested in participating, right? That's another way to keep in touch with them.
That's awesome. So that could be very valuable. I have 3 questions. First one is someone's asking, they're in the nonprofit world, does Chase provide funding or loaning opportunities for nonprofits? And if so, what are some of the criteria that they would need to have in place, or qualification they need to have in place for that?
So from a lending organization perspective, I am not 100% familiar from a business banking side of the house if we lend for non-for-profit. So I think that that's definitely a banker question, but that would be a wonderful opportunity for you to set up, kind of do the chase.com and set up that appointment with your local branch representative and really ask them if we do that and how we can connect. From the corporate side, we don't do a lot of small funding for non-for-profits. We fund the larger organizations like the opportunity funds, and we ask them to fund. So a non-for-profit can apply to those guys also for funding, depending on what they're doing. But and we do that because there's a couple of things that have started happening for us. About 5 years ago, we really took a look at the funding that we were doing from our foundation, pretty much, and there's additional requirements on our foundation to be able to say what is it that you're funding, and making sure that there aren't any compliance issues that start falling into place. So one part of it came out of compliance. The other portion of it came out of like, what business are we in, and what is it that we want to do? And we decided that we are in the financial industry. Our role is about helping people learn about their finances, growing their finances, and about making the economy better. And making the economy better includes business knowledge as well as work skills, right? Businesses need work skills for healthy economies. You need financial systems for healthy economies. And so from a foundation perspective, those are the things that we started investing in. As an organization, we have expanded that thinking recently. So we recently launched a Second Chance program because we realized that, but it ties back into the economy. And I know this is long-winded, but I'll tell you. So Second Chance program was our commitment to really realizing that if someone had been incarcerated, that there may be many reasons for that. That doesn't mean that they don't come back into the economy. And we need to find a way for that population to be an active part of the community again. So we very purposely choose a couple of different things that we say, maybe this is not pure education, this is pure financial, but in the long run, it talks about creating a healthy economy for the United States. It talks about downstream healthy economies to our communities, where if we can get education, if we can get jobs, if we can get businesses going, those three things will lead to healthier economies. Okay. So that's how we kind of tie it back.
Can I just say, though, that we do have a question about, at the end of the day, people still want to know how to do business with Chase.
Sure.
And in addition to going to the Supplier Diversity website, how would any business that's on this call go about understanding how they could become a supplier to Chase?
Sure. So we're scrutinized beyond what some people would believe we're scrutinized as. So we have some pretty stringent rules around how we manage our suppliers.
Not the hard part about the investment partners and those kinds of things.
No, I know.
But, people say, hey, look, I want to be a supplier of a janitorial. I want to be a supplier in security services, fencing. I want to help. How do they, not the ones that are really tough, but the ones that are more accessible? How do they get into knowing about that?
Absolutely. So that's and I like that you phrase it that way, right? Because I think that will help. It will help me also share with everybody that when we get a baseline look at suppliers, our due diligence requires us, and it doesn't matter what, I think the level of scrutiny is, you're absolutely right. There's a different level of scrutiny that goes into it, but the baseline scrutiny that we have to do in our due diligence is quite extensive. And there are times when I tell people, well, the amount of due diligence that goes into being a supplier with us, I'm not sure you really want to be a direct supplier to us, to be honest, right? Because it's really hard, because we have to make sure there are insurance requirements and our security requirements and our whatever level they need to be, so that we don't fall beyond an acceptable third-party oversight tolerance. But that said, we can't, that can't be the solution, right? We need a solution of how we get there. And so I want to get to why there's a solution of how we get there. And so we do two things. So we kind of look at a general starting MSA with JP Morgan Chase is about, the last time I looked at it was something like 75 to 80 pages, like just baseline materials, and another gazillion pages of security requirements to get through. And so when we think about that, like, what would it take for someone to get through that? Does every business owner have the time or energy to go through something like that, hire a lawyer for that? Or do you really want to be able to just get to an opportunity to work with us? And so we look for companies that have been in business at least 2 to 3 years,
Okay.
at least at about $1 million in revenue, and are able to then go out and get the type of their organization set up in a way where they're going to be able to be successful. But we realize that not everybody's there yet, and we also need to support growth. And so in order to support growth wherever we can, we have tier 2 requirements in our we have tier 2 requirements across all of our contracts, where our partners are
they're supporting your initiative, so they too are
yes.
supposed to do business with diverse suppliers. So
and I apologize. I had a ping in my thing saying I missed another meeting that got thrown in my calendar while I'm talking to you guys from my boss, and I'm like, okay, I'll just like everybody else, we all have these things to do, and I'm like, oh, okay. So that distracted me. So we have something called tier 2 in all of our contracts. We're asking folks to do that, but we're taking a very active approach in that also, right? And so where you asked, and I'm going to tie it into your ask on janitorial services, which I thought was very interesting. So we're looking at, we have a managed process at JP Morgan Chase where we have outsourced our facilities management and a lot of our construction project management work to other organizations, right? So some of the larger project managers. Mm-hmm. But with that, we have a very, very focused approach from both of our organizations and commitments from our partners in that space to really look at how do we bring in diverse business partners at a tier 2 level and at a tier 3 level. So that when we're talking to those parties, they're bringing in, so if you're interested in working with JP Morgan in this space, absolutely, on our website is our portal where you can connect with us. There's also our email address, which is supplierdiversity@jpmorganchase.com, and that doesn't just go into a vacuum. Myself and fellows on my team, we look at those emails and we direct them back to either we forward them or we share them with our partners at the other organizations where that makes sense. And then we've started a very deliberate effort of looking at kind of in local regions, like where are those opportunities? So if a company is capable of supporting us in those areas in a local region, then we make sure that we're introducing them to our facility management partners or our construction partners in those areas.
Just a quick follow-up. If I were so bold as to send you an email, well, I'm just a business out there, would you let me know who a good second tier supplier would be to you that I would be able to reach out to?
I think it depends on what the services are. We have confidentiality in our we ask for confidentiality, and others ask confidentiality of us also. So, but what I would do is have a conversation with that organization and let them know that I want to connect you to them and to them through our and look at you based on their relationship with us, as well as to look at you based on their ability to possibly work with you for their other work. So I would definitely do that. And then if I can make that connection, absolutely I would. So absolutely.
That's all we could ask.
Punita, what are some of the opportunities that are there? I know there's a couple of people here that are in the real estate industry. Do you guys, from a supplier diversity, so do you general services, or is there something very specific that you guys are looking for those suppliers for yourself? Or, I mean, some companies are across the board. Anything that you have, if you meet all of the criteria in your first tier, second tier, or third tier, there's an opportunity for you. So what are the very specific opportunities that JP Morgan, for suppliers, that you're looking for?
So there are always rotating opportunities going around, right? Like I think, absolutely we have, so you talked about real estate, right? There are projects that go on in our locations. There's about I think 280 locations in the California. I don't know the exact number in the Los Angeles region, or how wide the folks on this call or the constituents that are listening, you know, how widespread their service areas are. So there's things that can be happening there. So stepping back into what's really, you know, what are we looking at as a priority to us now, right? We're dealing with COVID. So we need to think about what can we do remotely? What can we do digitally? Very real to us is like we are utilizing Zoom. I will tell you that before COVID, getting onto Zoom, we didn't have Zoom as an everyday tool for us. We had other things like WebEx, but we quickly realized that because of the we have 240,000 employees worldwide, plus or minus a few. If we had to have everybody on Zoom and everybody on some web platform and on our systems, it wasn't enough, right? So we quickly expanded to adding something like Zoom. A lot of our business partners, if they were providing us with some kind of a technology thing, a lot of them moved into, like, you know, we immediately needed protection equipment and services, right? So they reached out to us and said, hey, I do these, I'm starting to look at these, do you need these things? And we also reached out to those folks to say we need these things. So we had to pivot our business. The next thing we're looking at is, this is teaching us a lesson to say, what was our strategy? You know we wanted to automate things more. We wanted to create more use of AI in our technologies and our services, or expand the use of AI. But it was a growing process while we were investing in it. You know, it had a horizon. We know now that when people get locked out of their locations, that we need to think about maybe ramping that up to, you know, in front, right? So if someone is well versed in AI or has created some implementations of, or some operations or product or services, that would be kind of interesting to look at. That said, we're going to need to open up our offices, and we're going to still need to do some of the things that we do, right? Those don't go away. So it's, how do we modify those? How do we change that? Our cafeterias are not open for business the way they used to be open for business, right? We had to implement a order and pickup system for our cafeteria. So like, it's just thinking about, like, what are the new ways in which we're working about, and what are we going to do? We know that when we go back, we have to think of new ways about how we push traffic through. So do we need new signage? Probably. Like, you know, things like that maybe somebody's supplying is the things that you would think. But I would like to say that people need to think about it in light of their business. I actually listened to a call with a supplier recently who just did a quick 2-second pitch on, like, how she had to pivot her business. And her business, you would think, you know, wow, she would close her doors and say, my gosh, what am I going to do? Her business was really events. You know, she has a resort in Costa Rica, and she provides on-site kind of destinations for events and for corporate events, right? That was her business. Well, with COVID, nobody was going anywhere.
Right.
So she pivoted her business to do online coaching. All the clients that she had, not every one of them took her up on it, but she said, hey, you're still going to do something. If we can do these programs and incorporate them in, what can we then proceed with some portion of what we're doing, right? So to me, that's saying, what do I need to do to go forward, right? And we have to think about those things, I think, as we think about the new world, because I will tell you that we're thinking through, like, what's our priority also. But those are some of the things that I have up front and immediately as our priorities.
Okay, we have about 2 minutes left, so there's a couple questions. There's a number of nonprofits. So, and I know we're in COVID world, and a lot of your sponsorship for nonprofits are probably directed to helping businesses get back on in place. But in a normal world, does in the community outreach and philanthropy part of JP Morgan, do you fund health and wellness, and do you fund nonprofits, and also the arts and cultural events?
So from the foundation side, we don't. Some of our businesses do, and we kind of, we as employees select things that we try to kind of bring in as part of our things. But from a business perspective, we're very, very focused on kind of, so we don't have the arts and the wellness types of funding that you're talking about. But actually, the only time that we made an exception to that is because of COVID, where we recently made funding available to America. So, and I'm reversing the name, but foundations to create, to provide direct access for food and healthcare, right, during COVID, where there was this lack of, right. So that was actually the exception to the rule because of just how the situation had evolved.
Okay, so that's good. And do you find events, or like if there was a big dance production, ballet, whatever, do you guys do those type of, the foundation do those type of funding or for branding purposes?
The foundation doesn't. I think that some of our businesses we have strategic partnerships, right? We're with like the U.S. tennis, U.S. Open and things like that. We have strategic partnerships that we're doing with Madison Square Garden, but we don't as a foundation do them. That's where the local relationships come into play though, because that local relationship is exactly the person that makes that decision. It's not a decision that's made inside at the big corporate level, but it's that local relationship that gets you those dollars. Yes.
Okay, so it's important to go into your local branch and really talk to the branch manager to find out what they are doing in their space.
Exactly. Get to know those managers and get to know those bankers, because they are the keys to that one.
Okay, that sounds fantastic. And we are at the top of the hour. One last thing, someone had a question, and I think this is in regards to PPP. Is it too late to create those relationships? I know there's supposed to be a couple. First of all, are you guys doing the funding for the PPP?
So we funded for PPP. We funded about 250,000 businesses. I know on the second round, we did not take new applications because we wanted to really support the applications that had come into us. We funded about $300 billion worth. And part of that, there's clarity. We needed clarity internally. We needed clarity like how the government wanted us to deal with it, and how the regulators would treat it, because it was different from what they're monitoring us from, right? But at the end of the day, we ended up funding around 250,000 small businesses and $300 million. In terms of additional funding, I don't know what the latest stat is in terms of coming in, but I would say that local banker is definitely going to be the one that's going to be able to tell you the real deal on that.
Okay, so they should actually go in and introduce themselves and talk to them about where they are and what their needs are. We want to thank you so much, Punita, to answering all the questions. I know it's kind of all over the place, but we do appreciate you. Karen, did you have any wrap up before we wrap up? Anything else you'd like to?
The only thing I would ask everybody to write down your questions. If we didn't get your question answered, please forward it to us so we can take the time to do that and try to find the suitable answer. And then also, Punita, I hope that you will work with Crystal and Stephen to have some way that we could follow and send questions to you that we know you would be helpful in answering, so that we can continue the dialogue.
Please don't hesitate to send them to me, get in touch with me, and I will try to answer everything that I can possibly answer. And if I don't know it, I'll try to search for the answer for you guys.
You're a great advocate. Thank you for allowing me to participate, Stephen. Thank you, Crystal.
And thank you guys. Thank you for inviting me.
I'm going to talk to you about the Business Zone at some other day, because I think you got some valuable information we can bring in from there. Everyone tune in tomorrow at 3 o'clock on the Business Zone on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and you can go to our website, the Business Zone with Crystal and Gilbert. We're going to talk about all the other corporations that are actually pledging to help small businesses. Some of them are going to have grants. Some of them are going to have programs. Some of them capital. So we want to kind of dig deep and find out, because going back, when we get back into regular life, we're going to require resources. Lots of resources. So
can I say something? I have to tell you something. I want everybody here to know that ACA 5 is now going to be on the ballot, which is going to put affirmative action back into employee contracting and education. this is going to make a tremendous difference in the way we do business in the state of California. And if we lose this opportunity, shame on us.
Right. And as well as that, the other the affirmative action is 2 weeks ago, reparations were actually put on the floor and passed through the ballot for the state of California. So now they're putting together a task force, a team of 8 to find out what does that look like as far as distribution or where the money is going to come from. So you guys see that on the ballot, I would suggest you all vote. And the other thing is make sure we're voting in November 3rd. So whatever you have to do, I heard last week that if you have not renewed your driver's license and have the real-time driver's license, you're going to have difficulty if you haven't registered to vote. So we want to make sure there is nothing keeping us from voting November 3rd.
Nothing,
that is
nothing.
so important. So work on it now.
Yes.
All righty, guys. Thank you so much. This video will be ready for distribution. I'll send it out to you, and I still got to send you last week. And then whatever was in the chat room that's of value, I'll send it out to you. And we want to thank you guys, and we got some fantastic people for next week as well. And if you had any questions, email them to me, and then I will make sure they get to Punita. And if you have any questions of Karen, she's very knowledgeable, and I'll get that to her as well. So thank you guys, appreciate it. And we will see you guys next week.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, bye.
Bye.
Bye.